Hey everybody, it is Mica, and today we're going to start the Extreme Primals of A Realm Reborn, because I know many of you want those primal ponies and that Kieran mount, but I'm sure at least a few of you haven't attempted these since you may think they're a bit out of your reach. Spoiler alert, they're not. When I decided to do these videos, I planned on explaining how to handle each and every mechanic and giving you some really fine details. But honestly, there's no need. I don't know if Square Enix nerfed these fights into oblivion, or if we're just that OP at level 80, but most of the mechanics that we struggled with so much at level 50, and even sometimes at level 60 and 70, are either completely skipped or pose absolutely no danger anymore. You can go full on DPS in these fights, no matter the job you're on, and depending on your DPS, you may not even see some of the mechanics that I'm about to discuss. But there are still a few insta-kill mechanics out there to watch out for, so that's why I decided to still do these videos. So if you want the mounts, I should say it will take you maybe an afternoon or two, depending on how unfamiliar you are with these fights and how many practice runs you need. Unless, of course, you really get slapped around by RNG, which isn't out of the realm of possibility. So with that, let's begin with the first three Extreme Primals introduced to the game: Garuda, Ifrit, and Titan, which I should mention drop not only their own mount, but also possibly drop a bonus mount called the Nightmare. Garuda, the Lady of the Vortex, will be our first so-called challenge. So to begin this fight, you simply want to run up, pull her, and position yourself between these two pillars. Now, just like in hard mode, you need these pillars to absorb her large attack, so you don't want her to destroy them. But you should burn your way through her first few phases so quickly the damage they take will be minimal to non-existent. But by positioning yourself here, you can avoid getting knocked around by the vortex she will summon around the outer portion of the arena soon after the fight begins, allowing you to move less and focus on your DPS. So just hold her here until she summons what we used to call her daughters, Superna and Tirada. Now, two things can happen here when she summons these depending on how much DPS you're doing. Either you will have already pushed Garuda low enough to do her big attack, and before you can do anything, she's gonna go into the air, come back down in the center of the arena, and cast Aerial Blast. Or she will become invulnerable, and you need to take down the daughters before turning around and DPSing Garuda again, until she goes airborne, comes back down in the center of the arena to cast Aerial Blast. Either way, while casting Aerial Blast, Garuda will become invulnerable. Now you can simply stand beside her and wait for her to finish, because Aerial Blast will barely even tickle you. Next, she's going to reach into the sky and summon that vortex around the outer perimeter of the arena again. And at this point, you just focus on DPS. Nothing she does should be able to hurt you enough to be worrisome. And with that, you can move on to Ifrit, Lord of the Inferno. See? I told you, these are going to be super easy. Now, Ifrit at this point only has one mechanic you need to worry about if you're solo, which I'll get into in a moment. He's going to have all of his standard attacks from hard mode, including plumes, dashes, eruptions, and incinerate, his frontal cone AoE, but none of these really pose much of a threat anymore, allowing you just to eat the damage. The only one of these basic mechanics that's even drastically changed from the hard mode are Radiant Plumes, which will now cover the entire arena save for a couple small safe spots at opposite sides of the room. Again, you should be able to eat this damage. There's two new mechanics that you may see, but if you're solo, you don't have to worry about them at all. If, however, you brought a friend, you're going to see Searing Wind, which will place a debuff on up to 2 players, causing them to have a large AoE pulse that will do damage and knock back anybody who gets hit by it. So simply stay apart to avoid this. There's also Infernal Fetters, which will chain 2 players together, causing damage over time and an increase in damage taken, which you can lessen by just simply standing near each other. The big mechanic here, which is going to be mostly unskippable depending on your DPS, is the new way in which Infernal Nails are handled. So much like in hard mode, Ifrit's going to begin by calling 4 nails. But this time when you destroy a nail, it's going to explode doing unavoidable AoE damage, and it's also going to leave you with a debuff that's going to make you take increased damage for just a few seconds. These debuffs also stack, so if you're taking too much damage, let the debuff expire before destroying more nails. However, this shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. You should have so much HP at this point, you can just eat all this damage. After all the nails are destroyed, Ifrit's gonna go airborne, land in the middle of the arena, and cast Hellfire. There are 3 set of nails in this fight. The first one is your standard 4. The second one has 8 nails, and the third will fill the outer portion of the room with 12 nails and have one large one in the center. The first 2 sets of nails can be handled in one of 2 ways, depending on how much damage you take and your DPS. So when the first set of nails comes out, you can just completely ignore them and continue to push DPS on Ifrit until he uses Hellfire. Now if you do this, you're likely going to skip the second set of nails altogether. Hellfire will be slightly more powerful since you did not destroy the nails, but it's possible to eat this damage. This is not a death sentence anymore. Or you can destroy the nails as they spawn, decreasing the potency of Hellfire. Now, you may still skip the second set of nails, but if not, you can handle them the same way, by either ignoring them and eating Hellfire, or destroying them. However, when he calls the third set of nails, the one with the really large one in the center, Ifrit's going to become invulnerable until all those nails are destroyed and he uses Hellfire. Now, you can push this fight very easily at level 80, so my personal suggestion here would be just to go in and go full on DPS and then just adjust accordingly for mechanics depending on how you do. And with that, you can move on to Titan, the Lord of the Crags. Titan will likely be one of your few challenges still when it comes to the Realm Reborn Extremes, since he has some very unforgiving mechanics even today. Much like Ifrit and Garuda, you're likely going to burn through this guy's phases really quick. And like the other fights, many of his once hard-hitting abilities, like Mountain Buster, is barely going to tickle you at level 80. So I'm not going to spend time going deep into any of them, as eating the damage and focusing on DPS and other less forgiving mechanics is generally going to be your best bet for a quick and painless win. The first half of this fight is just like it is in hard mode. You do a little damage, he goes into the air, and he comes down to hit you with Geo Crush, rinse and repeat. But this time you're going to trigger Geo Crush much quicker than you were probably expecting, as your DPS should be so high that he has very little time to do his own mechanics in between them. The first Geo Crush happens at 90%, meaning depending on the power of your opener, you're barely going to leave him any time to react. On my Dancer, my 2-step combo is more than enough to push him past this point. In fact, 2 standard regular old attacks is enough to push him under 90%, which will launch him into his first Geo Crush and his second phase immediately as the fight begins. But this time, when Titan uses Geo Crush, he's also going to destroy a significant portion of the platform. After that, he's going to throw out a couple standard punches and then use Landslide. But this landslide is a bit different than what you're used to. Instead of just one landslide, it's going to be split into 3, and that middle landslide is always going to be pointed directly at you. So if you're solo, it's very easy to predict and dodge as long as you've left yourself enough room. The easiest way to dodge this 3-way landslide, in my opinion, if you're running this solo, is just to run directly through him. At this point, you should have easily whittled Titan down to 50%, skipping all other mechanics. Even using a combination of auto attacks and my most basic combos with nothing powered up and not even queuing skills, I still skipped all other mechanics. But if your DPS is on the lower side, there is one more thing you may encounter: granite jails. Now, these are something I know Square Enix recently changed, and it used to be that when you get locked in a granite jail when you're solo, you had to wait for it to count down and then it would just kill you. But they no longer do that. So if you do get locked in a jail, just be sure to position yourself on the orange circle in the middle of the room in case Titan's next Geo Crush triggers. And this Geo Crush will destroy all but that inner circle, and if you're not standing on it, you're gonna fall to your death. This Geo Crush will also signify Titan going into his third phase, the Heart phase. Now, you want to push your DPS here and destroy that heart as quickly as you can, which it's really not that difficult to do. But if you need to hold back some of your more powerful attacks for this phase, by all means do so. Titan will likely jail you at this point, so you want to make sure you get that heart broken before he does. Whether or not you're in a jail, when the heart is broken, Titan's gonna go into the air yet again, land in the middle of the platform, and cast Earth and Fury for a laughable amount of undodgeable AoE damage. Now, if you are in a jail, Titan's gonna be a really good guy here, and just patiently wait it out. If you're not though, just wait till his invulnerability drops and you can resume the fight. The first thing Titan's gonna do is summon 2 Titan Iggy called Granite Jailers. Now if your DPS is high, you can simply burn Titan down here with very little effort and collect your loot. If you are on the lower DPS side, however, you're gonna want to destroy these jailers, taking care not to get stuck in the pools of yuck they leave behind. Soon after the jailers appear, there's also going to be bombs that drop at the cardinal points, followed by another set that lands between them. Basically, you can ignore these bombs and just eat the damage, because what you want to watch out for here is landslide, which will now go in 6 directions instead of 3, and getting hit by a landslide is guaranteed to knock you off the platform to a certain death. And that should be the last mechanic that you're going to encounter, even if your DPS is low. I had to reduce myself to nothing but auto attacks after the heart phase just to show you this much. So with that, Titan should be down and you can collect your loot. And now for a couple bonus extremes. So I have to tell you, there's no mounts that drop from these fights, and there's no weapons that drop from these fights. All they have are a few accessories, some orchestration scrolls, and maybe a couple glam items. Mostly you're only going to want to do these if you're a completionist. They are insanely easy too, so you may just want to do them for the story. And the first one we're going to cover is the Good King Moogle Mog the 12th. Now this fight is likely around the same level of difficulty as Garuda and has very basic mechanics, since they're pretty much all ignored. When the fight begins, you simply pull the Good King and start DPSing him down. At around 90%, which like Titan should only take a couple hits, the Good King is going to go to the center of the arena and summon all the smaller Moogles from the hard mode fight and become invulnerable to attacks. All you have to do here is simply ignore the King and all of his attacks, ignore the meteors that are going to be dropping down on your head, everything, and run into the middle of these Moogles and use a few AoEs. As soon as one Moogle falls, the Good King is going to start casting Moogle's Oblige, sacrificing his own HP to revive and restore the HP of every Moogle that fell. So by running into the swarm and just using AoEs, multiple Moogles are going to fall, causing the King to revive them all, taking a large chunk off of his own health bar. After 2 rounds of restoring Moogles, the King is going to begin casting Memento Moogle. It's a very long cast as well, and it's going to give you a lot of time to finish off all the small Moogles and the King. And it really is that simple these days. I mean, this fight was not the hardest fight when it was new either, so it's to be expected. But yeah, super simple. Now this last one is not really an extreme, but it is the instance Odin fight that you can unlock after a short and very interesting questline that tells you all about the great primal Odin. Unfortunately, the fight is nowhere as interesting as the quest line, and you're going to be able to melt Odin down really quick and just ignore almost all of his attacks. There's only one ability Odin has that you still want to dodge whenever he uses it, Volknut. This ability will still bring you up pretty close to death, and getting hit by 2 is likely game over. But it's super easy to dodge as it has a moderately long cast and is telegraphed by this really large circle around him. After a few attacks, Odin's going to mark you with a red circle, throw Gungnir into the air, and run to the middle of the arena to begin casting Jin Satsuken, I believe is how you pronounce it. Everyone inside the red circle is going to take minimal damage when Gungnir lands. At this point, you should be able to take out both Gungnir and Odin with just a few hits. Disappointingly easy, I know, but hey, the questline is worth it if nothing else. And with that, we're done with the first of the Realm Reborn Extreme Primals. I will have the next video out extremely soon. Anyway, I hope you enjoy your loot, enjoy your mounts, and as per the usual, it's been a hoot. Until next time, have fun.